A theater is where illusions are confirmed, where fantasies come true, where the impossible is presented with a song. It's the imaginative hub of a community, an enchanted locale outside the usual trials and reservations. When gone, it leaves an emotional emptiness.
My first question was, why did someone build the Levoy? The answer was to fill a void that had been left for almost a decade by this fire. A lot of different type of community events were held there, a lot of performances. And then in the middle of the night, one evening, it burnt down. It was some backstage lights had caught fire on some curtains and costume pieces, and the whole place went up. So there was no theater for a decade. There was no cultural center in the town. Cut to 1908, and a gentleman by the name of William Summers, they called him Pop Summers, he came to Millville from the Atlantic City area, and he built the Levoy, which was much smaller back then. So the Levoy came about because of a problem that happened with an earlier patent of his. He built the roundabout, what we would imagine today as a Ferris wheel. This was built in Atlantic City. It was very, very popular, and a gentleman by the name of George Ferris, or one of his accomplices, saw it and brought the idea out to the Chicago World's Fair. And they built a much larger roundabout out there, and he called it his Ferris wheel. Mr. Summers found out about this, and he wasn't too happy, so he sued, and George Ferris lost the patent to the Ferris wheel, but he did not lose the name, because his was made out of metal and Summers was made out of wood. He left Atlantic City and decided to open a new amusement, a third, in Millville, and that was how he built the Levoy Theatre. It was a small combination dance hall and small theater, probably about 150 seats. So at the time, they didn't really have films. They had some silent films, but you would have to have an orchestra there as well. So they had a lot of comedic vaudeville acts. Vaudeville was huge at the turn of the century. So Summers sold the theater to Warner Brothers. He thought it would be a great idea to sell to a company that was known for, making films and popularizing entertainment in communities like Millville and in big cities. As the popularity of TV caught on, as movie theaters became more widespread, especially in places like Camden, Warner Brothers gave up interest in the Levoy. Simon Cherevich took over. And he did everything he could. He brought in the Three Stooges. This was a really huge attraction for the theater. He also opened the theater to high schools. They did their shows here. They did their plays. Lots of different traveling acts came through, and of course they still did movies. You could see any type of movie here.
We loved Uncle Simon. We loved the theater. He gave us a place to be. For 50 cents, you could own your own seat, popcorn, soda.
I grew up in Millville, and I was lucky because I had an aunt and uncle that lived on McNeil Street in Millville. So I would be able to walk from their house down to the Levoy with my 16 cents to buy my ticket on a Saturday to watch one of my favorite films.
There were a lot of things that you could do to win things. And Simon would come out and he would say, what I'm thinking of is something that you see every day on your way to school. People are on street lights and park benches and people. It was a book. And you'd never guess it was a book because it was so vague. And so he got to keep his $5 or whatever it was he was offering. Simon Cherevich was an innovator, and he wasn't accepted at that time for what he wanted to do and for how much he saved this theater and kept it open when everybody else wanted it to close. We celebrated Christmas Eve at my house, and my brother was always sent with the task of bringing me to the theater. When we would leave the house, the tree would be up, but it would not be decorated. So we would come to the theater. Simon was open every Christmas Eve. When we got home, the tree was up, it was decorated, it was trimmed. There were 2 bicycles in the living room with lights on them, and it was all thanks to Uncle Simon. And those are the kind of things that you associate with walking to the theater on Saturday afternoons and walking with your friends. Hey, you going to the theater today? Yeah, we're going. Okay, we'll go together. You know, and it was a social thing.
They opened a movie theater in Vineland, and that was a really nice, comfortable theater, a little different than, an opera house type theater. So people sort of stopped going to the theater as much or going to see movies in a theater like this.
By 1974, the Levoy was showing its age. The seats sagged and the roof leaked. In July of that year, the theater closed, opening in November with 5-cent movie tickets that failed to cover expensive renovations or satisfy out-of-town investors. Right before Christmas, the final curtain dropped, and there it stayed for almost 20 years.
The Levoy Theatre Preservation Society was founded in principle on Christmas Eve of 1992. We could come home from my mother's house, where Mom was a Millville girl, and she was talking about the amusement park up at the lake, the roller skating rink here in Millville, 2 movie houses, the YMCA, and all the things that children and people had to do in those days. So when we got home, Joe was motivated, and he says to me, Dad, what can we do to help Millville? And I said, well, Joe, the amount of work you want to do depends on what we can accomplish. And he says, well, I'd like to do the Levoy. I says, well, you didn't pick the easy one, that's for sure. I said, but, the Levoy is nothing but brick and mortar, and money will fix that. We went on to form the Levoy Theatre Preservation Society, which is a 501c3 corporation that needed a minimum of 3 people. Jeff Page was the 3rd founding member. People don't understand, this was a 100-year-old theater. They don't have them anymore. And that was the call. That brought us to 1998, when we actually finalized the incorporation and we bought the building.
And they did everything they could with respect to fundraising, and it looked like it was going right along and they were doing really well.
We raised money through grants. We had a downtown event. We had food people, we had acting people, we had stuff in front of the Levoy where people could go in and take tours. We did anything for a buck, anything to keep us moving in the right direction. We had an event at the high school, and it was an old-fashioned night where anybody could come out and do anything they wanted to do, sing, dance, variety show. And one of the things that was rumored is that I was going to give away a bunny during the intermission. And I was talking about Simon Sherovich and giving away live bunnies and how people were, a little disturbed about that at the time, especially when their child came home with a bunny that they had no idea of how to take care of. Prior to me walking out on stage, I argued with our team that I wanted to carry a live bunny out on the stage and be petting the bunny, to talk about it the whole time, to set it up. But what we actually had was a stuffed bunny under the pedestal. So when it came time, I called the number and I pulled the bunny out, and everybody goes, whew, because we thought we were going to get a live bunny. So that was some of the things that we would do to try to revive and regenerate the workings of the theater. So Joe and his wife loved Union Lake. He volunteered as a Big Brother in the Big Brother organization. And this one particular Saturday, they were at the lake and they were out in the water, and the young man got in trouble. And rather than bothering anyone, Joey got out to him and saved his life. And in the process, he lost his own. To which I replied, the son of a gun died a hero too. I said, there was no end. There was no end to his love for Millville.
And so he was really the life behind that board. Even though they had a board, he was really the soul, the heart and soul of it. And so they continued along for 7 or 8 years, but they could never quite get the momentum going again, because it left the question open of, we want to open the Levoy, but why? The answer to that was a theater company, a resident theater company, and that was the Off Broad Street Players.
Around 2006 or 2007, my daughter Lauren was coming home from law school, and she was involved with the Off-Broad Street Players in a performance. She observed at the time that the Off-Broad Street was nomadic in nature. They performed in schools and church halls and wherever they could find space. She was trying to help them locate a building or a permanent place to operate from.
While we were performing, everyone said, "This is so great, we wish we had our own theater." Somehow that comment made its way back to Jim Quinn's ears, and he approached my dad and myself and said, "You should be doing these beautiful shows in a real theater, and why don't you renovate the Levoy and do them there?"
To their credit, they stepped up and they did what needed to be done. And of course, they're both bright people, both attorneys, both caring about the city of Millville. I was just so pleased as to how they took the job on and have done a great job with it. They really have.
Our first thought was to look at the building and determine what exactly made this building unique and what exactly made this building special, not only in the city of Millville, but in the region. We saw the bones were solid, but we needed so much help. So we engaged professionals like Jason Livingston from New York City, who was a designer of theaters, and we also engaged R2A, architects, and we spent approximately a year and a half designing what we would do with a theater. We talked to sound designers, we talked to lighting designers, we talked to contractors, theater professionals, everyone in the business that had solid knowledge of big theaters was consulted. Our thought was, if we're going to do something on a grand scale, we need to make it work, and it has to be productive. It was a mess. Every single part of the building was deteriorating and crumbling, but on the other hand, it was as majestic a building as you have ever seen.
Oh, it was magical. It was magical. I mean, it was so dilapidated that it was like a haunted house, but that's like perfect for the theater world. So we brought in a core group of, 6 to 10 of our closest allies in what we thought would be, a fun project.
This is possibly the most difficult project I've been involved in. I've been involved in a lot of projects, but this clearly was the most difficult in my life.
At the time that we were imagining the prospects of the building and the project, I don't think anyone could have imagined the amount of work that it would take and the obstacles that we would face.
The difficulty with this project was the immensity of it, the current political environment at the time we did the project, and the availability of resources. We were looking at a project of 22,000 square feet in the center of town that required millions of dollars of renovation. We really didn't know where we would find all of that money and all of that help, but we started a project and worked our way through it.
What goes up slowly sometimes comes down quickly. On January 3rd of 2011, a portion of the Levoy collapsed. However, the resolve behind the theater's reconstruction remained intact. The halt was but a temporary interruption.
Our contractor called us and said, "You better get down here, things are happening fast." So Lauren and I jumped in the car and drove down to the corner of High and Pine and saw what apparently was the collapse of the front third of the building. The same day that the collapse occurred, we had a meeting of all the contractors and architects and engineers, and we came down to the solution, and the solution was that we would solve the problem. We would build the building and we would sort out the difficulties. And to the credit of the contractors and the architects and engineers and everyone else involved, that's exactly what we did.
1/3 had fallen, but 2/3 remained. 5 months later, construction resumed. Time, that crumbler of buildings and nations and memory, would not prevail in Millville. A new front wall arose, recreating the look of the original facade. The Levoy Preservation Society had decided that the theater was going to return, and soon it did. Bigger and better.
I had written this play called Roundabout, based on the life of Mr. Summers. And the story goes that Lauren and I tried on some old costumes backstage at the theater, and it sent us back to the opening night of the theater when it was expanded in 1912. And so what we did in 2012 on our opening night was recreate the opening night, or what it would have looked like in 1912. And so we revitalized those 3 performances. There was a comedic act, sort of a silent comedic act, then there was a silent film that was accompanied by an opera singer, and then there was a magic show. And these 3 things were really, really awesome, and her and I, in character, got to watch these and then return to the present day and bring that idea back and rebuild this theater.
At that time, we had, I think, like 2.5 employees. So I was literally in the box office selling tickets and then ushering, to get people into the room, and then also doing the curtain speech. I mean, it was kind of like, you're just ping-ponging around. And I did get to do the curtain speech that day, and I kind of just peeked my head out of the curtain and said, "Welcome to the Levoy," and and everybody like went wild because it was the first time that that had happened in 40 years.
One of my favorite experiences in the theater on a daily and weekly basis is observing a visitor walk into our main hall, tip their head up and say, "Oh my God." They had no idea what they were in for. They had no idea that this grandeur, the size of this building and the complexity and the beauty of it was even on High Street, let alone in Millville. The goal of any theater is to stay forward thinking, and we spend a lot of time and effort putting our resources back into the operation itself. As you know, we're a nonprofit, so no one profits here, but the value or the profit is to the community by the improvement of our operations.
Technology, like in any industry, it's changing rapidly. For a nonprofit or any business, it's hard to keep up, but they are always looking to improve when they opened in 2012. So we did a big sound upgrade 2 years ago. We're currently looking at our lighting. Lighting has evolved. We have beautiful tungsten type lamps that are known in theater. They have that romantic look, but things are going towards LED fixtures that are more energy efficient, more nimble, and with the colors that you can generate on the fly.
We have thousands and thousands of dollars of lighting and sound and set pieces, and we have millions of dollars of preparation for talent.
I think for a theater in this area, one is just the beautiful inside and out this theater offers and the technology that we have. And 2, most is the diversity of programming. I mean, we'll have 3 show weekends where the first show is an alligator and an animal show crawling on stage. The next night, there's a wall of Marshall stacks. Third night, circus acrobats. Just the variety of programming that this theater offers in this area, it's unmatched.
In my opinion, as a performer and as someone who's worked in theater, having some of these sort of really elevated elements that enhance productions that you don't find anywhere else. Show me another theater, within 60 miles that has an electric pit. There isn't one because we're the only ones that have it. The rigging, the amount of line sets that we could get for the rigging, and the amount of the technical elements certainly did matter. And it was having the experience on stage that allowed me to, understand what was going to make those performances, more elevated.
I honestly think it's exceeded my expectations, and I'm happy to say that. I've had people that are friends from all over South Jersey come and tell me how they love the Levoy. It's a beautiful place, in the mezzanine, and having the Chamber of Commerce award ceremony there. It's really servicing the community very, very well.
When we came out of the pandemic, we had a year of closure that we had time to think and reorganize, and 2019 was our most successful year to date. So we had full steam ahead, train coming down the tracks, and then hit a brick wall with that closure. So gave us time to think, what were we doing right? What could we be doing better? And at that time, the board decided that we would reinvest and double down on our education programming. So when we reopened, we initially secured access to a building that's proximate right across the street from our loading dock and fitted out for studios, for lessons, for classes, for dancing, for rehearsals. And it gave us the opportunity to really start to cultivate performing arts education center and programming. January 2022 was when we launched our first full year of operations in that building. We've tripled the amount of activities and the amount of participants. And I don't know that growth is done. The more that we continue to add and advertise, the more we see positive response from the community. more people want to be involved, and of all ages. We have classes that are for like mommy and me, music classes for babies up to 36 months, but we have an incredible array of senior programming, drumming, which is cardiovascular, but also rhythmic and artistic, and we have radio plays. We have partnerships with the Veterans Home and other community organizations where we have, everybody reading from these scripts from the 50s and earlier, and they've been wildly popular.
So the role I'm playing is Ariel, just fun-loving, and she finds something that she wants and she goes for it, and she makes sure that she gets it, and she's just a great gal. I love her.
I'm John Ecker, and I play Prince Eric. The Little Mermaid is a just very good story. It's very empowering for a woman to take it into her own, to get her own legs.
The camps are one of the greatest outlets because they're not audition based. They're strictly open to anybody who wants to come and perform. They're 3 weeks long, so it's not like it's going to take up your whole summer. It gives everybody an opportunity to get the flavor of what it's like to be in a show, and they're 30-minute productions. So they get an introduction to acting and to singing and to choreography. They also get introduction to prop making, and they help with set design and scenic design, and some of the backstage elements go into it. And the feedback that we get is the kids just absolutely love it. They form friendships that carry over to the next year and the next year, and then, what show are you doing next? And are you gonna do the fall show? Are you gonna do the spring show? Are you gonna do summer camp? So there's all these different options. You can have kids that walk in here shy and could barely get their mouth open to audition, and at the end of the show, they're, like jazz hands with the bright smile on their face. And ultimately, will they be a performer for a career? Probably not. But will they have maybe a little bit better success at whatever job they end up doing because they have now the confidence and they've been able to speak in public and had the experience of working as a team, in a collaborative artistic environment? Probably yes.
The heart and soul of the Levoy Broadway productions is Lauren and Sean Pedrick. They work on that programming, and they're so involved in that local community. Obviously, Lauren's a performer, so she knows that. Obviously, some of our board members, Jim Cook, is involved in a lot of that as well.
I'm very proud of the accomplishments of my family, my friends, and the supporters of this theater. The people that had the belief that we could do it, that believed in us and supported us, and then the fact that we actually did what we said we would do. We opened the theater, we created economic advantage for the city of Millville, and we've created an arts opportunity for thousands and thousands of citizens.
I always knew that the Levoy would be a success. I'm not saying that out of pride. These are facts that we know to be true. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We just gave Millville one of the wheels. We said, this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to bring it back, and it's really about the people who were involved and the people who came before us and the people who will come after us.
My vision for the future of the Levoy Theater is that we are celebrating our 200th anniversary. My vision is that the theater will maintain its prominence in the theater community, that it'll maintain its prominence in the city of Millville, and that it'll continue to serve the community as it has.
The Levoy Theater did not rise from the ashes of the Wilson Opera House, but from the insistence of Millville's residents to have a place where drama, music, and dance could flourish. For more than 100 years, each time the theater declined, the people brought it back. And now it is back stronger than ever, continuing a story that is itself a drama. When a play is performed at the Levoy, it is a play within a long-running play. When a song is sung from the theater stage, it sings in the heart of the city.